We finally got our parts back from the blaster, so we're going to go ahead and set this frame up and start putting it back together. Okay, sorry if the audio and video is not too good. I was using a GoPro camera. It took a crap on the last video I shot, so I'm using a cheap little camera I bought off Amazon as a backup till we get another GoPro. So hopefully it's not too bad, but we're just gonna have to live with it for a while. We finally got our frame rails and crossmember, rear axle. We had all this dustless blasted. Turned out pretty good. We got a few areas where we got some pitting yet. It's not too deep. There's a couple areas we're going to have to look at. We might be cutting out and replacing. You see where we cut, here's where the patches were that we did. Once he blasted a few of the areas, a few spots look a little thinner now that everything's cleaned off of it, so we're going to evaluate that. We got to weld the back, couple places on these patches on the back side where the weld didn't penetrate all the way through. We're going to go ahead and just weld that in. But we got both rails. They cleaned up really nice. He did a really good job on them. We got the battery tray. These are for the cab mounts. These brackets are for the running boards. This is the rear cross member. This is the front. It's a front cross member and where the radiator mounts. We're actually going to be rebuilding a different one. You see down in here, it rusted pretty thin. I don't even know if we're going to be using this. We're probably going to be building all new cross members. We might use that one just because we have it, but we've decided to go with new tubing on everything. That way it all matches, looks a little more modern. We've got the front end kit on order and the 4-link kit for this rear axle. It's about 2 weeks ago I ordered that, and that's still 6 to 8 weeks out, so it's going to be a while before we see that. Hopefully it comes in a little earlier than expected, but I'm not holding my breath on that. But we got enough work to do now till that comes. It'd be nice to have it now, just when we're getting this all set up on the table, because we will be getting a new cross member for the front. It's going to be a Mustang 2 kit, so the old cross member for that old axle, none of that's going to be reused. It'll be a brand new cross member, and it'll have the mounts. We're going to use coilover shots and the upper and lower tubular control arms. So that we'll have a new cross member, so we figured we may as well just build the other ones to match. That way it's all rectangular tubing and it all matches together. We got the 4 links coming for the rear end. That'll also have polished coilovers. The arms for the front and rear are coming just plain steel. They didn't have an option to go stainless steel. Well, on the kit I got for that panel truck there, I bought that one from Fat Man out of North Carolina, I believe. Those came with, well, I upgraded with polished stainless arms. We bought this kit that's coming from Street Rod Engineering in, I believe, Iowa. They did not have an option for the polished rear or front. The only thing polished on it will be the coilovers. So the arms we're probably just going to get powder coated. We're still debating on the frame itself, whether we're going powder coating or paint. We got a little bit of time before we're going to be ready for that, so we're going to think about that for a while. But mainly, we were leaning towards paint at first, and then we went powder coat. And then a friend of mine that runs a body shop that's going to probably be helping us out with painting the body, doing a little body work. He tried talking us out of powder coating the frame, just because if you'd ever have to touch it up, it'll never match. I mean, for what this truck, it's going to be sitting in a garage and driven on nice days. It's not going to be out running the back roads, mudding and everything, so I don't know if we'll ever be touching it up. The powder coat looks nice. I looked at a car. Well, the guy that did this blasting for us, he had a car there that he had the chassis powder coated in, and they did a really nice job. Looked really good. The only thing I'm wondering is we do have some pitting and where we did some patching. Powder coating wise, I don't know. I did read online that they can spray a filler on it to smooth some of that out. I haven't talked to a powder coater yet to see how that works, but we'll see, because there's this frame we would like everything to be smoothed off, not to where you see any pitting, or the patches we could grind down good enough, but where it's actually pitted from the old rust, it'd be nice to fill all that in, so you're not really going to see it once the truck, as low as this thing sits, but it would be nice to have that all filled in. So I did read that they do a spray on powder that's like a filler. We might go that route, but we were leaning towards that, and then the more we talk about it, it'd be easier just to epoxy coat. Once we build the frame, how we like it, have it blasted again just to clean everything up, and once we get it back, take it in, epoxy primer the whole frame, and then just rub or skim a coat of filler over it where the pitting is. We'll probably be going that route. We'll do the epoxy. You can always spray a high build primer. Some of these pits are pretty deep for even a high build primer, so we'll probably be rubbing a little filler on it, but one way or another we'll get it looking good. So I've got this table here. This I used for when I built a frame for that truck. It's a pretty good welding table. It's a 4 foot by 10 foot, 1/2 inch thick steel plate. I've got adjustable legs. This is actually 4-inch electrical conduit, and we used conduit couplings where they're threaded on here, so I can put a level on the table and I can adjust these legs individually to level the table out. This garage floor is not perfect. I mean, it's pretty close, but it's nowhere near perfect. So we'll level the table out. I still got an upright from when I did the panel truck frame. I'm going to weld the uprights in here, and we can clamp and probably end up tack welding our frame rails to the table where they need to be. The main reason I got this old crossmember out, we're going to put the front crossmember back in, and this rear one, we're going to bolt them back in to get our frame width set. We'll square the frame up and we'll lay it out on the table, and that'll get us kind of where our uprights need to go. I'll weld those in, and then we'll kind of fine-tune the frame once we get it clamped in there. That's where it would be nice to have the front crossmember for the Mustang 2 kit. I believe they have the measurements in the instruction sheet, so I'm going to go ahead and print that off just so I have it. But it should match that crossmember there, because it is made, that crossmember goes all the way at the front that holds the radiator. That Mustang 2 crossmember will be back in this area, I believe. So that crossmember should just fit right in. Another thing we got to do before we get started, we've got all these holes for these brackets here. We're going to be boxing this frame rail. I got all the steel laying right here for that. So we're going to be covering it, making it a tube, not a C-channel frame. So before we weld all that boxing plate on, I need to go ahead and weld nuts on the back side and all these holes so we are able to bolt all these brackets back on. And we're going to be using We're just going to be using 3/8 weld nuts for that. See, it's threaded, it's got a little tab, but that gives you some room to weld versus just getting a regular 3/8 nut. You can weld just a regular nut in there, but it'll distort them. It's kind of a pain. Those weld nuts make it a lot easier. So we'll go ahead, we're going to have to weld all those weld nuts in, and then we'll start cutting the boxing plate out and start getting that welded in. Hopefully by the time we get all that done, our suspension kits have showed up, and we can just continue going. So I'm gonna go ahead and clear some of this stuff off, and we're gonna get ready to start setting these frame rails up. Okay, that's how we're going to leave it today. We actually didn't get as much done as we were hoping. Kind of got sidetracked. I had to go run a few errands, and we kind of got to talking and strategizing. We did get kind of a game plan, but it took us a while. So we got everything drilled out, and the weld nuts are in, at least on one frame rail. I had to order more for the other, but you can see they fit in there pretty nice. So I got this. I was short two there, but I got those on order. You may have saw on the time lapse I had the TIG welder out. We went on the back side of these patches that we cut in, and we MIG weld the front side, but we never come along the back side, and where it didn't penetrate all the way through, I just went ahead and fused all that together just to make sure we didn't have any pinholes or anything that'll give us problems down the road, end up popping paint or something from a little rust hole. So I just went ahead and run the back side of those patches and fused it just as a little extra insurance. I will point out we did have my dad started on the other frame rail, the boxing. We had to cut. Let me see the profile here. This side is actually taller than this side, so we had to go with a square and scribe that frame rail and trim this side down so we can get an even box plate on it. It goes that extra height till it widens out here. So we had to trim about ½ inch off of that. You can see this is the one he's got done. And he started cutting the boxing plate. He's got to scribe it yet and trim it. This thing makes a lot of size changes throughout, so until we get to that wider section there, we're gonna have to do this in small pieces, just so we ain't gotta, I mean, if you had like a big sheet of steel, you could scribe the whole thing at one time, but we're using smaller steel for cost. We did have to go along. Some of these rails, being a C-channel, they were bent in or out. So we had to take a square, run a square along this edge, and adjust this thing in and out to make sure the rails are square, nice, and running nice and straight. So that's where we're gonna leave it for today. I'll try to get back on it tomorrow. Hopefully the rest of those weld nuts should be in a day or so. Okay, you see me going along with these frame rails. Before we put the boxing plates on, I want to make sure these rails are square both ways. So I just got this little square and we're going along. A lot of them are pushed in that way, so both of these are narrow, so that would make this narrower than this side. So I'm going along, checking it with the square, seeing which way it needs to go, and I'm using just the porta power with the duck bills on it. I'm putting just a backer in there to spread it, and then just putting the porta power in and pushing these rails out as I go. A few areas I had to heat up with the torch just because I couldn't push it, or if it's a small area, it's easier just to heat it with the torch and hit it either way with the hammer. But for most of these rails, we're just going to do it with the porta power. So we're going to go ahead, get both of these rails straightened out, and then we can start putting our boxing plates on. Trim that level. See that prime? He's just starting to cut out the box plate. Brooks and Dunn are torn this year, but the closest they're coming to Springfield or Indiana. Yeah. Hoping they come back to St. Louis. That's where that engine was. That's only about 2 hours. Alright. How the hell? There, it's right on. That way.
So that's how those things are.
Yeah, just squares over. Right here, it's right on. That's right where it's been. Alright, we got boxing plates in. Got them cut with a nice gap so we're able to weld it. We'll cut this last one in, then we'll transition to 6-inch. I'll set you down, you can watch that. Alright guys, this is how we're going to leave it for this video. See, we got all the boxing plates cut out, ready to go. We did leave a little gap there for welding. We got to touch everything up with the grinder, knock off any slag, but they'll be ready to go. We are going to shoot the inside of the frame rail in the back of this with some weld through primer. We're going to mist it with that. Then we're going to weld the box plates on. After that, we'll take the like an undercoating gun and we can go through the bolt holes on the other side, and we're going to paint the inside of the frame rail after it's welded. We'll use like the 3M frame wax or something similar to that. Probably be the 3M frame wax where we can go through all the holes on the other side. But the only reason why we wanted to be tack welding this on as we were going, but it is Saturday and no one had that weld through primer. I kind of forgot to order it last week. I knew I needed it and forgot about it, so no one had it today. That's why we had to cut them, and everything's sitting like this. So next video we should be welding everything in, and then we're going to be putting our uprights on the table and leveling and getting the frame ready for the Mustang 2 kit and the rear axle install. So we're going to leave it with that. Tell me what you think about this video. You guys want more time lapse, just showing us working, or stopping and kind of talking about what we're doing? Still kind of new at this, first couple videos on this truck build, so kind of getting a feel what everyone thinks about it. We'll try a few different things, but that's how we're going to leave it today. I appreciate you watching. If you can, leave me a comment, hit that like button. We'll catch you next time.